First Breath program at my baby and me. And I kind of cover the western part of the state. Some of the middle sections are a little blurry, so most of you are familiar with me because I do cover Dane County, Rock County, and some of the other counties surrounding this area. My counterpart is Carl, and he will be talking later, but he's another one of the health educators here. So just kind of a few things to get out of the way first. I want to make sure everyone has the correct folder. So everyone should have a regional sharing session folder. Janet, if you don't mind, please share yours. Some of you were here for a training earlier, but we want to make sure everyone has one of those. There's some note sheets in there if you guys want that. Oh, thank you. She's letting me show everything. The note card here, I just want to reiterate, please let us know kind of what you guys have seen. Some of you have been with First Breath since we started. Some of you are new faces. So please let us know, even if you've only been with us for a couple weeks or just anything that you guys have seen. We're very proud of the 15 years that the foundation has been around for. So we want to celebrate that success with First Breath and my baby and me as well. There is food over there. Please eat more. We will not be taking it home with us. Oh yes, Janet, please eat, drink. If you need to use the restroom, they're actually around out this door. So we won't be taking a formal break because we are kind of on a schedule. So if you need to use the restroom, feel free. Please, again, get more food, all of that great stuff. And let us know, if you have a card, if you have something that you filled out, let us know. And anybody with one of these name tags can just kind of grab that from me. We'll be sharing at the end. So again, welcome to everyone. Just want to make sure we've got everything on here. We're very happy to be here. We will be covering things on both First Breath and my baby and me. So for those of you who aren't providing my baby and me, that's okay. It's just good information for you guys to hear as well. Agenda. We have some people at the foundation that like to, make sure that we have our times, and we want you guys to kind of know. As you can see, this is really a big part of our time. The provider discussion is really why you guys are here. We want you guys to hear from each other. We want you guys to have that ability to discuss with one another, network with one another. So we're going to be covering a lot of updates and things, but that's really our main focus for you guys. And the other thing that we'll be doing is the research topic and science updates. We have a great video for you guys to watch on marijuana use. Who's excited about that? Yeah, I'm excited about that. So we're hoping that you guys will be excited. But we do want to be respectful of time, so that's kind of why we want to get started right away. And we'll have you guys out of here at the time we promised. Overview of this past year, we want to start off with just some of the great things that we're doing. So our impact in 2011, I'm going to read this to you guys quickly. Before the First Breath program, I was a smoker for about 5 years. I really wanted to quit for my baby. The First Breath program gave not only me, but my fiance the push to quit smoking. And 3 months into my pregnancy, I finally completely quit. Even after I quit, First Breath stayed with us and kept helping us. Now my daughter is 2 months old and is very healthy. She was 7 pounds, 10 ounces, and 20 inches long, and again, very healthy. My fiance and I are both still smoke-free, and I cannot be happier. So this is just one of those really great feel-good things that all of you providing the First Breath program are allowing this to happen. And we've even gotten more just from this 2012 year too. So congratulations to all of you. I won't do the little pat yourself on the back thing, but just know that we're very, very, very proud of you all as providers. We're growing. So even since this past year, how many of you guys went to a regional sharing session in 2011? Anybody? Awesome. Good to see you. Okay, since 2011, we have grown again. This is a map that we have. Carl and I, when we first started, because our faces are new this year, kind of received this map and we were like, okay, so we've got the West, we've got the East, and let's go on this journey. But all of those stars that are yellow are First Breath sites. All of those stars that are pinkish purple are my baby and me sites. And as you can see here at the bottom, 129 for First Breath and 43 for my baby and me, and growing. Carl and I both have several trainings still scheduled, new providers coming in, and it's just wonderful to see how much this program has grown since we started, and we're very, very happy about that. Some of the highlights that we're going to go over, I'm actually going to have Hillary Whitehorse. She's our program manager for First Breath of My Baby and Me, discuss these. Another word, some of you have your folders open. I just wanted to let you know that all of the slides are going to be in there. So if you're interested in taking notes, feel free. And yeah, I'm going to hand it over to Hillary.
Great, thanks Chelsea, and thank you again all for being here. I want to go over some of the program highlights from last year, and a lot of you are new faces, but there's some of you that I've seen over the last 5 years that I've been with the program. So thank you, and stop me if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to go through these some of these highlights pretty quickly. So as you can see, First Breath enrollment, which is the number in the bar, has steadily increased over the years, and then there was a little dip in enrollment, 2009 and 10, and then back up again last year. We have an average quit rate, which is the percentage above the bars, of about 35%. And what I want to say about the quit rate is that our quit rate includes women who quit before they joined First Breath. So usually a lot of women quit when they find out they're pregnant. And then there's also a group of women that quit during First Breath. So as of July 31st, we have had 748 clients enrolled in First Breath. So we're on target as about where we were last year as well. Our client population remains fairly consistent over the last 2 years. You'll see we have a majority of clients are Caucasian or white, with a slight increase in the enrollment of African American women. There's also been a slight increase in the enrollment of American Indian women. A little bit more about the client demographics. Almost 80% of the women enrolled are eligible for Medicaid. 75%-ish have a high school or less education level, and a little over half are unemployed. We have an average client age of 23 years old. Does this sound pretty close to the women that you see in your clinics and your practice? A majority of our women started smoking fairly young, although we've seen some much younger than 13. The women enrolled in First Breath smoke about a half a pack to a pack of cigarettes a day, and almost 80% of them have tried quitting before. So actually, I just heard from someone at the foundation that enters all the First Breath data, that they had entered someone who's reported having tried quitting 100 times. So these women they want to quit, and they've tried quitting numerous times in the past. We also, Chelsea read a really nice quote at the beginning of the session. We have a couple more. Some of you may know that our clients are sent a client satisfaction survey when we receive their postpartum data. So we do get some really nice comments after, and we'd love for you to and encourage your clients to share their stories. But we've had some healthy babies. In this first, I'm really enjoying the pointer right now, but the first quote, Dana talked about a scrapbooking party that her First Breath provider had for their clients, and that provider was utilizing a mini grant that we had available at that time too. So they had a group of First Breath women, and they got together and had a nice celebration and did some scrapbooking. We have a couple other healthy comments here from women, and people feeling really good about protecting the life and protecting the health of their babies. I'd like to give a couple program highlights from our My Baby and Me program, which is our, for those of you who don't know, our program similar to First Breath, but focused on alcohol use during pregnancy. And if any of you would like to provide My Baby and Me, please feel free to contact Chelsea, Carl, or myself, and we'd love to provide training for you. I want to mention that these program highlights are from October of 2011 to March 2012. My Baby and Me runs on a different cycle, a different time cycle, then it's not a calendar year, which is confusing. But so there were 13 new sites and 62, new providers trained. And we're always looking for more to provide more My Baby and Me services. So again, if you're interested, please let us know. Between October and March, there's 28 My Baby and Me women enrolled in My Baby and Me. And let's see. Of those 28 women, 22 reported not drinking after they found out they were pregnant. 5 reported drinking one standard drink 1 to 3 times after they were pregnant. And 1 woman reported binge drinking on 1 occasion. And just really quickly, a binge drink for a woman is if she drinks 4 or more drinks on 1 occasion. So, and I just want to also mention that this is a very small sample size, so be aware of that as I mention these next couple highlights. But 9 of the 11 women who had postpartum surveys, 9 of those women reported abstaining from alcohol while participating in My Baby and Me, and 2 women reported having 1 drink while participating. Also in My Baby and Me, we utilize the TA screening, which is a screener for possible alcohol dependence issues. And so here are some of the results of that questionnaire screener. Women reported having an average tolerance of 5 drinks, and that's actually so that's considered a positive answer to a positive result of that question, if the tolerance is above 2 drinks. So the women participating in My Baby and Me tend to have a higher tolerance for alcohol. 6 women reported being annoyed by their family members or healthcare providers, being concerned about their alcohol use. 8 women reported feeling the need to cut down themselves, and 4 women reported needing a drink to start their day. So if they've answered positively in some of these questions, it may suggest a need for further treatment. Very similar to First Breath, all these women are enrolled in First Breath as well, so the client population, race, and ethnicity is similar. They have a slightly higher education level, the women enrolled in My Baby and Me, but about the same unemployment. All right, I'm going to pass things off to Mary, and she will get going on some of the program updates.
Just so you guys know too, not to interrupt, but if you have written down something that you've seen change with the First Breath and My Baby and Me program on your note card, Amanda can come around and pick those up, so just kind of let her know.
Okay, so last year I started a project that some of you may have, well, I was a part of starting a project that some of you may have heard of with the texting, the Young Mothers Outreach Campaign. So that was, social media and First Breath. So the Young Mothers Outreach Campaign was successful and liked enough by the women in it that we decided to extend it to all First Breath moms in the state. So there are 2 components. So first we changed the name because it's now open to every mom. Before we just had a targeted population of 18 to 24-year-olds. And so they're sorted into private groups on Facebook. We asked them to like our page, but that has happened once. So generally we want either myself or Amanda will try to find them, friend them through our Facebook avatar, and then sort them into these groups. And so they're secret, they're private, none of their Facebook friends know that they're in this group. And what's really neat is we've seen a lot of dialogue. They'll ask questions, they'll answer questions. A couple moms have been really good about encouraging others. And so if at enrollment, if a woman expresses interest in being a part of this, there is now on the new enrollment forms a little box you can check. And then we do ask if you could possibly, if they want to be enrolled in, or be a part of that, ask them what their Facebook username is, because it's often not their real name. The then the other half of the social support that we provide is texting. We have an online program now, so we're able to extend it to, I think we're allowed 5,000 contacts. So a lot of women. So previously we asked that they texted to this number. Let me do this, it's really exciting. This one. And we can still do that. So if a mom texts, I want to be a part of this campaign, or First Breath to this number, she'll still be enrolled. But we prefer that moms text First Breath as one word to 313131, and then they're automatically enrolled. They get an automatic response, and we can start communicating with them that way. So, couple things. If a woman wants to receive texts, we just ask that you please make sure they have a phone that's enabled to receive text messages. We, for some reason, have seen quite a significant number of phone numbers that are landlines and don't receive text messages. But then also to fill out their telephone number, because we've also seen that where they want texts but don't want us to know their number. And then we'll be doing about 3 to 4 texts a week in place of just 2, and it goes 6 months postpartum. So we have 2 separate categories of texts. We're also working on filming videos on a wide variety of subjects, and there are about 12 of them on YouTube right now on our YouTube channel, and there's more to come. So for example, this, in a month, this presentation or one of the RSSs that we'll be doing will be for those who couldn't attend. And then we'll also post it to our Facebook page. And then if you go to the website now, it looks the same, but we've been in progress of updating it, and so it's really exciting. That will be up soon. So I'm going to pass it off to Carl, who is Chelsea's double on the other side of the state.
Thank you.
And you do have a new the text messaging handle for clients in your folder, and you can order more of them if you'd like, or you can make copies of it. It's kind of that gold color, and it looks like it's on the left side of your folders.
Is that a do not reply to this text, or can you text back and forth?
You can text back and forth. So what happens is it comes into our program online like an inbox, like an email.
Okay.
So then it works like an email, but we're actually texting between each other. So, and they are charged. It's not free on their part, but most of your clients will have unlimited texting, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Excellent. Chelsea introduced me very briefly. My name is Carl Oliver. I'm actually the health educator for the east half of the state. So I saw a few familiar faces, but not a whole lot. But that's okay. So I'm sure a lot of you are from right here in Dane County, which is one of Chelsea's. I also hold the title of first male employee of the Wisconsin Women's Health Foundation ever. So I'm proud of that. But as leading into this, a topic we've been getting a lot of requests for lately is marijuana use during pregnancy. First Breath obviously is a tobacco cessation program. We do know there are a lot of women who are concurrently using marijuana at the same time. So we've been really reaching out, trying to find experts in this area. One such person we were able to reach and connect with is Laura Parker. She is the program manager for ARC AODA services right here in Dane County. Her background is in social work. She does have an emphasis in mental health and substance abuse. She has also been working in substance abuse specifically with women for right around a decade now, so she has a lot of experience, just a lot of that background knowledge that you get from that hands-on work. And you also may recognize her for those who have been around longer than I have. We have partnered with her in the past. She was actually one of our speakers at the 2009 statewide meeting. So if you recognize her, that would be why.
Hi, my name is Laura Parker. I am the Program Manager at ARC Outpatient Services located here in Madison, Wisconsin. We are a women's treatment agency. We are a nonprofit that provides mental health and substance abuse services to women and their families, and we have a specific program that is dedicated for pregnant and postpartum women struggling with substance abuse issues. I have been at ARC for about 10 years now. and I have a background in social work, a master's degree in social work, and a concentration in substance abuse and mental health services. So I'm here to speak to you today. I heard that there have been a lot of questions about substance abuse, pregnancy, the impact on the mother, impact on the fetus, the baby, and that's something that we've really put a lot of time and energy into here at ARC, looking into, researching, and then just also kind of fumbling our way through things and figuring out what works and what doesn't. I'm by no means an expert, but I have learned a couple things over the last couple of years, so I'm more than happy to share what I do know with your group. Well, we know that a lot of people want to know what the documented side effects, potential risks are on the mother and the fetus. There is research out there, but there's not a lot of it. And I think what our field struggles with is you can't take a group of pregnant women and say, here, you smoke, 5 blunts a day, and this group of women, you smoke nothing, and let's see what happens. So a lot of our research is not the most solid because we can't have a control group and a treatment group. So a lot of it is anecdotal. They'll do studies where they look back at women who reported use and what the impacts were on her and the fetus. But we know that those can be a little dicey as well because a lot of women don't just use marijuana. Oftentimes they're using alcohol, they're using tobacco, and we have to go on self-report. So when you have to go on self-report, you never quite know what you're getting. But we know that THC does affect mom and baby. To the extent to which it affects, I think, is where we're still struggling as a field. But we know for mom, it increases her heart rate. We know that it decreases the amount of oxygen she's getting. We know that it introduces carcinogens to the body, which are obviously not good. And THC does cross the placenta. So that means, I think you're all familiar with this concept, but what you drink, your baby drinks. What you smoke, your baby smokes. We know it takes a lot longer for the baby to process THC. Their bodies can't process it as quickly as moms. They're getting less oxygen because of the marijuana smoke. We know that women can have preterm birth. I think some new things just came out about that as well. So it can lead to preterm birth. It can lead to low birth weight. It can lead to birth complications. So those are just a couple of the risks that we see. Long term, there have been some studies that say that babies or children may have attentional difficulties, behavioral difficulties. Those are not as well documented. But we also have to be careful when we're sharing side effects or risks with women. If someone said to me, if you continue this behavior, you'll have preterm birth and low birth weight, I would say, gosh, I better stop what I'm doing. You tell that to some women and they say, okay, so my pregnancy could be shorter and I could have a smaller baby so I could have an easier delivery. I don't see a problem here. So you need to be really careful in how you frame these things. So instead of just saying low birth weight or preterm, go into the details a little bit more and explain how that can have major health complications for the baby. So you want to be really careful in what you think is maybe a side effect or a risk, may not be a side effect or a risk to them. So a lot of women are using alcohol and tobacco together. That is very common. And I think marijuana can have a detrimental effect on someone's tobacco cessation. I think we've often seen that it's hard to quit one and just the other. And that's something that we often think of as kind of a cross addiction. If they quit one but not the other, they're still in addiction. So it's real difficult to say I'm going to quit just one and not the other. And we certainly see that here. Women will come in for treatment for opiates, heroin, cocaine, marijuana. They're willing to quit those, but as soon as we start talking about tobacco cessation, the conversation shuts down very quickly, particularly with our pregnant women, because they feel like they are giving up everything else. Don't take my cigarettes from me. So that's something that we really struggle with. And I think women realize there are more consequences from illegal drugs than there are from tobacco, so they're more willing to give those up. If they've got a probation officer that's saying they need to stop using, then they'll work on it. Or a child protective services worker who's saying you need to stop using because they don't want to lose their kids, they'll work on it. But tobacco is legal, so that's really tricky. And we often see cross-addiction for women. When they do stop one thing, they'll switch over to something else, especially if they think it's less harmful than what they were quitting. So a lot of women feel that marijuana is healthier than tobacco. They feel it's a plant, it grows out of the ground, it's all natural, so it's better than tobacco. And what we know is when women smoke marijuana, they get even more carcinogens from it than they do tobacco cigarettes. And there can be just as many chemicals on marijuana as there are in tobacco cigarettes. So a lot of the women just need more education about that. And if you think about it, a tobacco cigarette at least has a filter on it. If I'm smoking a blunt or a bowl or whatever it may be, I don't have a filter. So I'm actually bringing in even more chemicals into my body and even more chemicals that could affect my pregnancy. So it's important that women know some of those side effects. And that is very difficult when you are trying to work with tobacco cessation and marijuana cessation at the same time. So when you find out that a woman is smoking marijuana, or you want to start talking to her about her marijuana use, it's very important that we come from a non-judging place with our conversation and our questions. Especially those first initial questions are going to be key to how you work with her down the road. It's very important that you ask questions that are open-ended. So we don't want to say, are you smoking marijuana? Yes or no. That puts a lot of pressure on her. It's a very loaded question because in that moment she has to decide if she's going to tell you that she's doing something she knows she shouldn't be doing that could be harmful to her baby. And a lot of women are under the impression, if I tell them I'm using drugs, they'll take my baby. So it's a very loaded question, even though it may seem simple to you and it may seem like something you can just check off. It's a huge question. So we don't want to ask yes or no questions. It's called a closed-ended question. We want to ask open-ended questions, which are, so why don't you tell me a little bit about your marijuana use? So it's less judgmental. It's just saying, let's have a conversation about this, or about how much marijuana do you think you're using. We also want to work to, stay with me on this, destigmatize stigmatizing behavior. So we know that if a woman knows she shouldn't be using alcohol and drugs during pregnancy, we need to make it okay for her to say yes. Not because we're trying to trick her, but because we want to make sure if she needs services that she gets them. So something that we might say here, and I used to do intake here before I became program manager, so I learned all these things the hard way, is you might say, I work with a lot of pregnant women that are really struggling. They've got a lot of things going on in their life. They may have a lot of physical symptoms from their pregnancy, and they're struggling. And one of the things that they do to cope is use alcohol or drugs. Is that something you've ever felt you've had to do? So it's very caring. I'm not going to, drop over if you say you're using alcohol and drugs. I know this happens. This is very normal. So you really want to normalize that. We're not saying it's okay, but we're saying we get it. We see this all the time, and we know that it's something that a lot of women do to cope. And then you say, is this something you feel you've had to do? So for a lot of women, they don't feel like this is a choice. They didn't sit down and say, I've got this healthy way to cope with things, and I've got this unhealthy way to cope with things, and I think I'm going to go with unhealthy. That's all they've known. That's the decision that they've had to make. They may have come from families where every single person in their family smokes, and that's okay. And we hear that a lot too. My mom smoked with me, and my sister smoked with her kid. They've got 10 fingers, 10 toes, they're healthy. But we know that alcohol and drugs really do affect brain development more than anything else. So there could be some pretty major behavior, emotional kind of consequences. So we need to be really careful in how we approach that topic, and not assume that that woman knows that it's a bad thing for her to be doing. She may think it's the most normal thing in the world. So that's when we have to be really gentle and caring. I was given an example of when I went in for a physical, the nurse, before I talked to my nurse practitioner, the woman who was screening me at the beginning, take your weight and temperature and all that. And she said, "You don't use alcohol and drugs, do you? No one's hurting you at home, are they?" So those are other examples of really close-ended questions that have a lot of judgment in them. It's basically saying, don't tell me the answer, I don't want to know. And I think that a lot of times questions are asked in that way because we don't know how to respond to the answers we get. So it's important that you have those open-ended discussions and that you're really not judgmental, and you have to check your judgment at the door because we all have them. Especially when working with pregnant women, I've had to do a lot of work on that myself, and realize sometimes women may not completely stop using these substances. But if you can work on harm reduction, that's huge. So just to recap, destigmatize stigmatizing behavior. So make sure they know you hear this all the time. It's totally normal, and you're not going to freak out if they say yes. Ask open-ended questions that really start a conversation, and they can't answer it with a yes or no question. And then make sure that you can follow up and say, do you want help with that? Would you like to cut back? I can figure out who can help you with that. I can make an effort. So if we know sharing consequences of use doesn't really impact women, if they hear preterm birth, birth complications, low weight births, if those aren't important to them, you're probably asking, then how do I talk to them about marijuana use? One of the things that we do is we use motivational interviewing. So rather than saying, you're pregnant, don't use, or don't you want to quit, we need to ask her what her goal is. And that really helps build trust and safety. So what are your goals around your marijuana use? Do you have any goals? Or what are your goals kind of overall? And, engage her in that discussion of what is it going to look like when you have this child? Where would you like to see yourself? Now, some women cannot really think that way because it's an abstract concept. And I know we work with a lot of women here with, cognitive difficulties, fetal alcohol spectrums disorders. So those might not be the best questions for them because they're a little abstract. But we can engage women in discussion of, okay, so once you have this baby, how are you going to take care of yourself and the baby? What's the plan? What are your goals? What are your parenting goals? And then we talk a lot about, okay, now we've set these goals. How does marijuana use fit into those goals that you've set for yourself? Sometimes they'll say, well, it's not a problem, doesn't affect it at all, and then, that's a point where you just kind of let it ride. You say, okay. But keep that in mind, because there are times where you can say, if they're talking about being broke, you can gently bring up, well, let's look at your budget. Where is your money going? Okay, and, this. And I think I remember you said you smoke a little bit of marijuana. How much would you say you're spending on that? So you can start to plant some of those seeds in a very non-judgmental way, just letting them know, hey, it's part of your budget, right? You smoking a little weed? Generally, you don't get that for free. If you're not getting it for free, then we need to talk about what you're doing to get it, which is a whole other issue. But, okay, so what do you think about that? Boy, are you really spending $100 a month on weed? What else could you spend that on? That's a lot of money. So there are ways to kind of gently bring it up without, I know it's hard sometimes as providers. We just want to tell them how bad it is and how they should stop using it, but I've done that and it doesn't work. I'm sure you've all done it and realized it does not work. So really letting her drive the ship, because it's not my treatment, it's her treatment and it's her life. So making sure that you just kind of keep bringing it back to her goals and what she wants. And a lot of times women will get to a point where they realize that it's something that they do need to cut back or just completely quit. So it's important to help her set those goals and then just kind of point out, how is your use fitting into those goals. There's a lot of motivational interviewing techniques out there you can look at. You can go home and Google things as well. But there are some things that you can kind of keep in the back of your head as tools to use along the way when you're working with women that are struggling with use. So traditional models of development say that in order for us to mature and develop, we have to individuate and separate ourselves from others. So that's kind of a male normative way to look at development. We don't look at development that way for women. A lot of women's treatment programs talk about this a lot. We really work from a self and relation model, which is the idea that women heal and grow through relationships, not by cutting themselves off from relationships. So to say you pull yourself up from your bootstraps, you cut off your family, you cut off your friends, you go your own way, that doesn't really work for women. And I've actually been places where I've heard, not here at ARC certainly, other treatment places where they've said, you need to stop worrying about your kids so much and focus on yourself. You don't say that to a mother. So we know that relationships are so important. So when we have a woman whose mother, sister, the closest people in her life used marijuana during pregnancy, the chances that she's going to listen to you when you say you shouldn't or hear the risk are actually pretty slim. That's something that we've often struggled with here, because you can't say, do they have behavioral problems? Do they have emotional problems? Those relationships are really important to them. And if you start to dissect those and try and pick those apart, you're just going to alienate the woman, and she's going to lose a lot of trust in you. So I think we have to be really careful. I don't have a magic response for this, but we have to be really careful in how we approach that. We may know that, that child could have issues because of the marijuana use, just because they have 10 fingers and 10 toes and appear healthy. Doesn't mean that there aren't effects, because we know that alcohol and drugs affect the brain development. I don't think we can go there. As much as sometimes we want to, I don't think we can go there, because most of our ability to help people is built on safety and trust and respect. And when you start questioning those really important relationships in their lives, you're going to lose them. What if someone said to you, well, what your mom did wasn't right, or what your sister did wasn't right, or what your partner did wasn't right? Did they really know what they were doing? They don't know what they're talking about. I know more about this than they do. Well, they're going to have problems. I know for me, I would probably shut down, and I would probably not really talk to that person anymore, and I think a lot of trust and respect would be lost. So I think, again, I don't have a magic answer for this one, but I think you just need to work with them and where they're at. I think once you build a good enough relationship, you can say, rather than telling them what risks are, you can say, would you like to hear what some of the research says about using marijuana during pregnancy? I know your mom and sister used it, and it seems like it turned out okay for them, it sounds like, but would you want to know what some of the risks are? Because I just found them out myself. So I'm a little new to this. We can talk about it and just kind of have a discussion about it and see what you think. So that has a little different feel to it than, well, you shouldn't be using marijuana during pregnancy, and I'm going to tell you why. So, again, you may know all the reasons, but it doesn't matter if you lose her. It doesn't matter if you've lost her respect and trust and there's no more safety. So, I think it's just really important to be very gentle around these topics. I think we all have responsibilities as healthcare providers or, human services providers, that if a woman tells us that she's using marijuana, that we do need to address that. I think particular if she's pregnant, that's something that we need to address. I know a lot of people don't feel comfortable addressing it because a lot of times we don't feel we have the skills to do so. But it's important that you find out more about what's going on with her and her marijuana use. There are a couple screening tools that we can use, we can kind of keep in our head. They're acronyms. One is CAGE, C-A-G-E. C stands for, have you ever felt like you need to cut down on your use? A is, have you ever felt annoyed by people asking you about your use? G is, have you ever felt guilty about your use? And E is, have you ever had to have an eye-opener? And basically you're just getting a sense of, is the marijuana use having an impact on their life? some people feel like any marijuana use means that someone's got an abuse or dependence diagnosis. That's not really how the criteria work. But if someone's pregnant, we are always trying to reduce the number of teratogens they're taking into their system. So it's important to kind of ask some of those questions and get a sense of, if they're answering yes to all of those questions, that that's someone who probably needs to be referred for an actual alcohol and drug assessment. So I think we have a responsibility to keep asking about those things. And figuring out, are they able to take care of their children if they do have children? And that's something I'm sure a lot of your agencies have policies on, and, I'm not an attorney and I don't know legal things, but I think it's just important for us to keep in mind, are they able to be good parents and take care of themselves? And if they're not, then we need to make some referrals and get them resources. So you are most likely, a lot of you are not substance abuse treatment providers, but there are a lot of resources out there. You could certainly refer them to us. If you have questions about where to refer women, you could also call us, 283-6426, area code 608. There's also the Wisconsin Women's Education Empowerment Network. I always get the E's mixed up. But if you look that up online, it will actually give you women treatment programs throughout the state. So you can actually click on your county or area. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I think you can click on a map and it'll show you who has women's specific treatment in your area. And then there's also SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, that has a treatment locator on their website, and that's a national project. So there are resources out there. You don't have to do that treatment. There's a lot of options out there, so you can help them kind of figure out where they can go. A lot of HMOs are connected with substance abuse treatment providers as well, so we know most pregnant women are going to have insurance, Medicaid of some sort, so there are options for them. So I know we've talked a lot about marijuana and pregnancy, the impact on the fetus, but I do want to talk a little bit more about what happens when the baby is actually born and what happens postpartum when a woman is using marijuana. We here at ARC strongly encourage women to breastfeed, but when we know a woman is using alcohol and drugs, that kind of changes the picture a little bit. We know that THC marijuana does go into breast milk, so we know that that baby is going to be further exposed to THC. We know that THC can affect the quality and quantity of breast milk that a mother produces. The American Pediatrics Association actually says, if you're going to breastfeed, don't use marijuana. For our population, it's more like, if you're going to use marijuana, please don't breastfeed. So, and same stance with other alcohol and drugs. Again, there's not a whole lot known about the exact impact of THC in breast milk on an infant, so I think the safest bet is don't do it. And that's what the Pediatric Association is recommending. And I think it's kind of our safe public health message. We often talk about, especially with alcohol use in pregnant women, kind of the safest message is there's no safe type of alcohol, time to drink, or amount of alcohol to drink during pregnancy. And I think we kind of have that same stance with marijuana. We just don't know enough, so it's better to not breastfeed if you are regularly using marijuana. Besides the breastfeeding question, we also have the question of how does this smoke impact the baby? And I think a lot of you are probably familiar with how tobacco or secondhand smoke may affect the baby, but the same thing, they're being introduced to carcinogens. It's affecting the amount of oxygen that they get. We know it can lead to respiratory problems. We know, especially for moms, it can lead to immune system issues or reduced immunity, and same thing happens for the baby. So, we know those are some of those risks that are happening. I don't know if we know a lot of long-term risks, but we know kind of the first-hand risks. We see a lot of kids with asthma, and I think that might have something to do with it, but again, there's not as much documented on that topic. For us here at ARC, we just think of it all as addiction. So we need to treat both as an addiction because we know they are, and use pretty much the same tools for both. That's what we do. It may differ for you, but for us, addiction is addiction. And we need to kind of still use the same open-ended questions, make sure we're not using any judgment, make sure we are destigmatizing, stigmatizing behavior, that we're working from where they're at, not where we're at, where they're at, what their goals are, and how we can help them with those. And I think if you can kind of keep those main things in mind, you'll be successful in what you're doing, because I think we're all in this field because we want to help, and we want women to have better lives, we want babies to have better lives, and I think any efforts we can make to help women even just cut down on tobacco and marijuana is much better than doing nothing.
Yes, I do have a blank slide. So I was hoping we could just do a very quick, very brief processing. I was hoping people would be willing to share a little bit. What are you going to be taking away from the video you just watched? What was your take-home message? Or what jumped out at you?
How to initiate talking about it. I think that's my hardest part, is how do I approach this
Okay.
so that she's not going to get hurt.
Yeah, so some new ideas for how to bring up the topic, how to approach it.
There's still a lot of uncertainty about the effects of marijuana.
Yes, absolutely. It was a drug that, for the most part, for about 15 years there, nobody was willing to touch with any kind of research. So there was a big knowledge gap. And unfortunately, I'll be touching on this in just a moment, but marijuana has also changed a lot in those 15 years, which is very important to be aware of as well. So the studies that came out in the 1980s aren't necessarily as relevant today due to the change in this drug as it is. Mary Kay, go ahead.
I like the fact that you could conceivably treat it the same as you're doing with tobacco, because a lot of the things that she mentioned apply to tobacco as well, so that
Yeah.
was kind of nice to know it kind of ease into it that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you approach from the standpoint of, okay, this is something you're interested in quitting, let's talk about your interest and let's focus on that, as opposed to let's have me give you more reasons why you should quit. If they're already at the point where they're ready to move forward with that, you can step away from the information and focus just on that behavior and on their perception of it. Anybody else? Any other takeaway? Or what have you seen in your own practice? What have you come across?
A lot of marijuana smoking.
Okay. A lot of marijuana.
And a lot of people saying, well, what would you like me to be, stressed out or smoking marijuana? So, I mean, you do approach it from, you have to acknowledge that they have a choice and whether they're ready to hear the information and move on it.
Yeah.
Just like smoking or anything else, but it's a lot more hidden than smoking.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they're at that point where they feel like that's a mutually exclusive situation, where it's, I'm either smoking pot or I'm either really stressed out, one of those two, that's a tough situation to come into, and you have to honor and respect where they're at and how they feel about the situation. Thank you.
I have people that come in that say that they're continuing to smoke marijuana because it keeps them from getting nauseated in their early pregnancy.
Okay, so kind of a little bit of self-medicating, dealing with some of the changes that are going on during pregnancy.
I think marijuana is a tough one because it's recreational, but then there are really some medicinal purposes for it.
Yeah.
You know, and like you said, it's changed so much in the last 15, 20 years. What's in it? You know, what are people doing to it before they're selling it? And I think a lot of people just in the general public don't really think about that, and marijuana is still that soft drug. It's not, I know they call it a gateway drug, but it's more on the streets considered the soft drug. It's not a cigarette, it's not crack, it's not cocaine, it's not meth, it's not heroin, it's weed. What's wrong with marijuana? You know, but it really has changed, and so approaching it is hard because it's not really treated like other
Mhm.
drugs are.
Yeah, it's just socially seen much more acceptable than crystal meth or crack cocaine. So I'm actually looking at the clock and I know I'm running out of time up here. So one other thing, in your packets there are some science updates, recent research that has come out in the last year actually primarily. But one that I did want to touch on kind of quickly was also on the under the marijuana section. I'm not sure if it's on the front page or back page. It's slipping my mind, but it was an article published in Drug Testing and Analysis, actually just a couple weeks ago. It was August of 2012. As I kind of alluded to earlier, marijuana has undergone very significant changes in the last 15 years. These new medicinal strains, things that, I mean, we have people who study botany who are focused on just making marijuana more potent and more effective, and that's, over 15 years, can have a very large effect. So now, strains today can have up to 20 times as much THC, as much of the active substance, as back in the early 90s. One of the other things which I actually just learned about from this article as well was that there are now synthetic cannabinoids. It's basically a man-made substance designed to act similar to the THC in marijuana. And these can be extremely potent, anywhere from 500 to 600 times as potent as traditional marijuana. So this is very important to be aware of, that this is something that is available to your clients. I've heard that there actually are some gas stations that are selling them. I've heard that secondhand, so and I'm seeing some nods. So yeah, that's just something to be very aware of, that there are these other substances out there with little to no research into the safety, so it's just something else to be aware of and something else that your clients might be experiencing. So otherwise, browse the rest of the research at your leisure to keep us on time. I know I just went a minute over, so I'm going to pass the course.
And if you do want to, we have the full text of those articles, so if you're really interested and you want to read through them, let us know. We have access to that. We didn't want to include